Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Chase Life podcast, episode 7 with Rachel and David Godfrey. Now, today we're going to be talking about a topic that I am very familiar with, and that is managing stress and overwhelm. That's not all woo-woo and shit. Because one of the things that I found when I was looking to really try and manage my stress and overwhelm a good 10 years ago now or so is that when I was looking for solutions, I found that they were all quite woo-woo. Now, look, there's a time and a place for everything, but for what I was looking for, to be honest, that kind of stuff really repelled me. So I wanted to talk today a little bit about this and how we actually manage stress from the inside out rather than from the outside in. Now, look, when people are looking to manage their stress and overwhelm and time management and things like that, it's the first place that they often look is to look for things like how do I improve my time management? Okay, let me go and read these books. Let me go and do these podcasts. Look, I went as far as having a monk teach me meditation. Look, the monk was fabulous and all, but I was still stressed. And so these were tools, but they didn't actually fix the real problem. So one of the things that we find at Chase Life is that when clients come to us and say, can you help me manage my stress? We know for sure that there's a lot going on behind the scenes in terms of managing their emotions.
Yeah, exactly. Time management isn't the key to resolving stress and overwhelm. And very often people look to those tools that you mentioned, and not that those things are irrelevant. If somebody is monumentally disorganized, then obviously that's only going to add to the problem and so forth.
But if somebody's already organized, and I speak from personal experience here, and obviously, the experience of working with our clients, like they're very organized ladies. Like I was really organized, but I was always looking to how do I become more organized? Like how can I find more time in my schedule? Because I was just so busy all of the time, but busy being busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Busy being busy, but also, as I know, because obviously you've spoken about your story at length, also lots of periods of where you were so burnt out that you were sat in front of your laptop convincing yourself that you were working and, working at 5% capacity perhaps.
I'm probably filing my nails at the same time.
Yeah, because you were so stressed, and procrastination is a sign of stress. People tend to procrastinate when their brain is just so burnt out, and their brain needs to go into the repair and recovery side of the nervous system. And because they haven't allowed themselves or created an environment that's conducive to that, their brain goes, well, screw you. I'm going to find a way to force you to slow down and switch off.
That's a really interesting way of looking at procrastination, because, I think some people feel procrastination is, I certainly used to feel that it was me being lazy. And, how can I push myself harder to get out of this procrastination? It means that I'm not focused. It means that I'm not this. It means that, I'm not working to a high standard. And obviously I know, I look back and I totally see the error of my ways. But when you're so far into it, it's really hard to get out of that feeling, especially when you feel so under pressure already and you've got this, what is nothing more than self-imposed stress, but it feels like literally the world of, the weight of the world on your shoulders. How do you even start seeing the other side?
Well, hopefully what we're doing here is just helping to shine a light on some of what's really going on for people. And like I say, people are often looking to solutions that fundamentally are not, that they're only working on the superficial symptoms. It's just like, in fact, most areas of life, people are focusing on the external strategy. So when it comes to fitness, they obsess over diet and fitness. When it comes to relationships, it's all about what's the best pickup line, what's the best dating app, what should I put on my profile, what should I say, what should I text back. And when it comes to business, it's what's the best copy, and what's the best funnel, and
what color should the sales button be,
yeah, stuff like that. So people are obsessing over the external strategy, and not that strategy is irrelevant. Those are obviously the tools that we use to implement external results, but that is all built upon the foundation, which is somebody's mindset and emotion. What is it that dictates somebody launching a business and just going from strength to strength and taking it into the stratosphere, and somebody else trying to launch exactly the same type of business at exactly the same time, and then they're constantly held back by stress and overwhelm and all of the rest of it. It's all about how they're regulating their emotional state. And as humans, we can often get trapped into blaming our external circumstances for why we feel so stressed and so overwhelmed. And I'm not negating that people don't have a lot on their plates, right? We have lots of clients coming to us who have a huge amount of demands and responsibilities. They've got a busy job or business, lots of employees or a team who are depending on them, clients who are depending on them. They've got perhaps a family at home. They're raising, small children at the same time and so forth. So they've got a hell of a lot going on their plate. However, the source of people's debilitating, overwhelming stress is fundamentally a result of what they're doing internally within their own internal mindset. And all of the best time management systems in the world aren't going to fix that problem. And kind of briefly touching on things like meditation. Again, meditation, amazing. I use meditation from time to time. But one of the things that I think is often missing with that is, first and foremost, it's not going to resolve perhaps deep internal emotional conflicts that people have. And secondly, it doesn't necessarily translate into how you do life, how it's all well and good being able to feel connected to the universe and feeling deeply relaxed. And
oh my God, too woo-woo, stop.
and at peace when you're in the comfort of your own home on your couch, when you've got half an hour to switch everything off and listen to some bongo music. But what about when you've got to fire somebody, or your suppliers and contractors are not delivering on what they said they were going to deliver, and all of these other demands and problems? Like, how are you handling that then? What about when there's the never-ending to-do list that there's always stuff, and it's nothing's ever complete, or there's all of these unanswered problems, unanswered questions, unresolved problems, unfinished business hanging over your head constantly. There's all of these open loops in people's minds. It's like, that's unresolved, and that's unresolved, and that's unresolved, and how am I going to do that, and how am I going to do that, and oh my God, I've got all of this other stuff as well. Blah, 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 blah.
That's pretty much like how I used to live. And but let's not deny it. There is a certain level of success that somebody can achieve through essentially smashing themselves into the ground and, with their perfectionist ways, overwhelming stress, and basically beating yourself up to achieve a certain level. Yeah,
massively. We see this a lot, actually, again, with our types of clients, because we tend to work with, for want of a less judgy title, successful people. Now, obviously, success is based on how you define it. But what most people consider as success, as in they've achieved a good level in either the corporate world or in their business, they're doing well financially and so forth, and they've achieved a certain level, but they're monumentally stressed and overwhelmed. And what they've learned to do, for a lot of them, not in every single case, but for a lot of them, they've learned to produce a certain level of output through perfectionism. Mm-hmm. And so through perfectionism, the primary driving force with perfectionism is fear-based. So obviously they're going to be motivated to work hard, to put in the extra hours, to dot the I's and cross the T's for positive reasons. There will be things they want to move towards. They enjoy the impacts they can have for their clients. They want to grow their career or their business to a certain level. There are definitely these goals they're moving towards. However, the number one primary driving force for why they do those things, why they put in the extra hours and so forth, is pain. It's the pressure and the stress of, if I don't do these things, people are going to think that I've dropped the ball. People are going to criticize me. I'm going to lose favor with clients, with my boss. My colleagues are going to start talking about me behind my back and so forth.
And above all, because, you basically tell my story here, right? And above all, you feel this overwhelming disappointment with yourself.
Yeah.
And then that leads back into the self-worth loop of, okay, well, you've disappointed yourself because you haven't achieved the level that you said that you were going to achieve for yourself, which is usually an overachieving level, and frankly often an impossible standard to reach, which you then fail at, and then it makes you feel like a failure.
Yeah, exactly. The need for acceptance from other people fundamentally is acceptance of self. That's what if you totally and completely accepted who you are as a person, wholehearted, unconditional love and acceptance of self, then anybody else's opinion becomes irrelevant. So that is the true antidote to a lot of people's struggles with the fear of rejection and the fear of other people's opinions and the fear of failure and so forth. So because people have learned to achieve a certain degree of success through perfectionism, then number one, they are scared of letting go of that because that's the only way they've learned to raise their energy. A lot of people, in order to produce the level of output that they're trying to produce every single day, there's other things that can be mixed in, like chasing the wrong things for the wrong reasons. We've discussed that in another podcast. Let's just take that off the table for the moment. Then the way that people are trying to raise their level of output to do whatever it is that they're trying to do is through stress energy instead of excitement energy. Right? So stress energy comes from fear and anxiety and what could go wrong and lots of what if questions and what else is wrong in me, in my work, in what I've done, in how people are perceiving me and so forth. And so because you ask those questions, you're always going to find something. If you ask the question, what else is wrong or what's not good enough, you're always going to find something. So you're living in constant fear and anxiety. And when you don't find something, you're living in fear that you've missed it. So you keep looking for it.
And it's funny because like working in that manner, and I've worked on both sides of the spectrum, like working in that manner is like pushing shit up a hill. It's so monumentally stressful and painful. And then, I've worked on the other side as well, which is where I work now. And that's that, work from flow in inverted commas, where it's easy, you know? And I think that there's this massive fear of letting go of these, the perfectionist ways and this addiction to stress. One of the things that I think we've talked about before is this addiction and addiction to the stress and addiction to the feeling that it gives you, because it almost gives you the sense of fulfillment, but it doesn't quite hit it. And then you just keep chasing it again and again and again. Yeah,
there are things that can absolutely amplify the addiction to it, such as if you have a weird sense of pride. We encounter a lot of people who are perfectionists and they take on, and sometimes they're people pleasers with it as well, as in they take on everybody else's stuff. When other people in the office or in the team can't deliver, then they pick up the slack. And there's also a massive sense of pride that comes from the sense of, I can do what other people can't. Right? Whenever other people drop the ball, I know I can pick up the slack. So now there's even a sense of pride and sense of surrogate self-worth. It's not true self-worth, but it's surrogate self-worth that comes from being the overachiever of the office, perhaps. And now I've almost got this sense of status that I want to hold on to and I'm afraid of letting go. So that can also be tied into it.
But at the same time, then you have this like conflicting values where you then have this like massive sense of resentment as well.
Yeah, hugely. Because so when it becomes too much, you become super pissed off that other people can't pull their weight. But then at the same time, you've kind of conditioned them into expecting you to pick up the slack. So anyway, people can often learn to get to a certain level within their careers or within their businesses using perfectionism. And if they are super driven and they have a high tolerance for pain, they're willing to just grit their teeth and grind it out, then they can achieve like a decent amount with that strategy. But the trouble is it's completely unsustainable, and there are much more effective ways of doing it, but they've never learned those ways. It's completely alien to them, and so they become super scared of letting go of their current method of perfectionism. And oftentimes it requires somebody to a certain degree hit rock bottom, or I don't want to phrase it that way, because the bottom line is that nobody has to hit rock bottom in order to make a monumental transformation in their life. But there has to be this gap between where they are now and where they want to be in the future. And they have to get to a point of threshold where they go, I can't tolerate this shit anymore. Mm-hmm. This has become such a debilitating part of my life or experience that I can't keep going the way that I am. It's unsustainable. I'm not happy. I thought there was more to life than this. I thought I would have overcome this by now.
Like I had that.
Is this it?
You know, and I remember my like rock bottom in inverted commas, and it was never really like a rock bottom mental breakdown or anything like that. It was a time where I was supposed to be presenting at an event, and my mentor was in town at the time, and he was usually the one to call me out on my behavior. And he did it with, you know, basically he was very direct with it. And I was supposed to be presenting with him at this event, and I was doing so much perfectionism over it, and I was so afraid of saying the wrong thing. I had been put on a bit of a pedestal to speak at this event. I actually bottled it, and I said to him, I can't do this. I'm just too stressed. I need to go home. And I remember going home, and I had a friend staying with me at the time, and I had one of these fuck this shit moments. I need to go and get a massage. So I went to my Thai place that I was living at in Sydney. So I had an amazing Thai massage. I got a bottle of wine on the way home, and I sat on my couch, and it was really one of those moments where I was like, shit needs to change. And then like my mentor phoned me that night, and he was like, Rachel, what happened today? And I was like, shit needs to change. And it was like, it was the first time I heard the phrase, when a student is ready, the teacher will appear. And it was at that point, God, this would have been at least 10 years ago, where, and I still remember it to this day, where I, like, that was my turning point. But the thing is that you don't have to wait to get to that point. Like, you can, you know, if you vividly imagine yourself being there already and make it painful enough now, like change can happen now. You don't need to wait for that to happen, you know, and so many of our ladies are afraid of change. Well, for me, it wasn't a case of, oh, I'm afraid of the change. It's like, I have to change because the consequences of not changing are so painful for me. Like, I am like one of my highest values is never letting people down. I work in integrity, and I do what I say I will do. I let somebody down that day. And that was the big thing to me, to say, pull your fucking socks up.
Nice. Yeah, I think that bit you just touched on with being afraid of failing and so forth. And I know we touched on beliefs perhaps at the end of the last podcast. I think said we'll talk about it, and then we still haven't yet, but I promise we will.
Oh, because that's going to be such a big one.
It is a big topic, but oftentimes people have a whole bunch of fears and doubts and limiting beliefs, and what if I can't, and what if I'm not good enough, and what if I, you know, go to all of those lengths and I'm still not good enough at the end of the process, and all of that kind of stuff. All of that completely disappears when you get a big enough reason to change it in the first place. And one of the biggest problems is that people have learnt to tolerate their problems. They've learnt that it's become the new normal, and they've learnt to just live with it. And even though they're unhappy, they're not unhappy enough to do anything about it. And again, you don't have to hit rock bottom, but there has to be a gap between where you are now, where you want to be, and an absolute resolute commitment to do whatever it takes. That doesn't mean something that's convenient that you can shoehorn into your already busy schedule.
That's what I was looking for.
Exactly.
Like, I didn't want to change my busy schedule. And I think and so many of our clients have resonated, you know, with me when I tell that story, and they feel like that too. They just were looking for something to already plug into their already busy life. And it doesn't work that way. And actually, one of the other things that I found was that I did have a lot of resistance come up to change, particularly because I thought I had to do all this woo-woo stuff, which I fundamentally, as a very practical person, like I'm a former physio. I've got, you know, I like science, and I like the very practical way of thinking and like the way of doing things. And I felt a lot of resistance to overcoming perfectionism and stress because I felt I had to do this woo-woo shit. And actually, let me tell you, like, you don't actually have to do that, and it doesn't work for a lot of people. Look, for some people it does. That's great. You can carry on. But if you're like me and you want you want to take action immediate. You've made the decision. You want to take immediate action on this problem and you want to see an immediate result.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome to Chase Life. This is what we do.
Exactly.
Right?
The solutions are very practical.
Yeah.
So that whole thing about perfectionism is one of the classic examples. It's a very, what we do is very practical based. It's the emotional states that people are struggling with have a clear strategy. It's a skill. It's a more subjective skill because you can't observe it with the eye. It's not like watching somebody play the piano. You can't observe it with your eye. It's a subjective experience that somebody is having inside their minds. But nonetheless, we now have the tools and the understanding as to how do people manipulate their internal representations, and how does that then become a neurological habit. And it's really simple. So all of these patterns that people are struggling with have a very clear step-by-step strategy, and equally the alternative that you would like to replace it with also has a very clear alternative strategy. So this is literally swapping one skill for another. However, doing that takes commitment. It's like if you wanted to become a grade 8 pianist, you're not going to do it with a part-time mentality. You're going to have to make it a commitment. And it's the same with this. And that's why many people struggle, is because they haven't made a proper commitment that they have to do whatever it takes. They dabble, they look for quick fixes and so forth. And obviously those things don't work. One of the things I often say to people is that when you're willing to walk through fire, you very rarely have to do so. You're still willing to do it, but because you're willing to do it, that means you give it total and complete commitment. There's none of this back and forth in your mind. There's none of this wishing for an easier solution.
And I think that comes as part of changing yourself from the inside out rather than trying to control your external environment. Because when a lot of people struggle with stress and overwhelm, they look to control their externals, like, their boss made them feel bad, the dog shit on the floor, like the kids are driving them mad, like their husband is driving them up the wall. And it's all this external stuff, which, look, sometimes these things do happen, but it's how you actually manage and respond to that from the inside out.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things that gets people stuck with the whole stress and overwhelm is that they are thinking, I'm already stressed and overwhelmed and busy enough. Thank you very much. I don't have time for this shit.
Yep, I felt that too. And a lot of our clients say that, right? It's okay. So what sort of time investment would I need? Like if I wanted to come and join you at Chase Life, how long would it take? And this is a question that we get asked a lot. It's like, well, you say there's a lot of work involved. Well, how much time does it take? As if to say, I don't really want to kind of change the way that I'm doing things because I'm already time poor. Honey, the reason you're time poor is because the way that you're managing your emotional state, it's actually got nothing to do with whatever's on your plate. Yeah.
And the answer is always, does it matter?
Yeah.
How much time is it going to take?
Does it matter?
Does it matter? What are the consequences if you don't fix this? And so again, that's the difference between being committed versus trying. Right? When somebody's committed, they go, you know what, I have to do whatever it takes. And again, the irony is, when you're willing to walk through fire, you rarely have to do so. Again, that doesn't mean that you're not going to work hard. You're going to be all in. There's going to be some discomfort along the way, as with any area of personal growth. But the process becomes so much easier than it would be when there's all of this back and forth and wishing things to be easier and blah, 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 instead of being fully committed to totally transforming yourself from the inside out.
And I think as well, it can be a really liberating experience, like that feeling of when you've made the decision that things are going to change. And when you work with the right people to make that happen quickly, it's such a fulfilling experience. And you just chase more and more of that feeling of freedom because you trust yourself and, your self-worth is improving and your confidence is improving. It's not a roller coaster in a bad way. It's a roller coaster in a good way. And it's so liberating to feel like these new feelings and to be able to work in flow and to be able to work with speed and accuracy and in the absence of perfection, and in the absence of procrastination. I look at what I do now and I'm managing 2 young children at the time of this recording. Our son is 2 and our daughter is 4 months old. Running a business on what is essentially maximum 10 hours a week. There is no way 10 years ago I would be able to manage this level of stress, in inverted commas, had I not been able to have the emotional freedom that I do now.
Exactly. Getting to the true source of the issue means that you end up being able to do more with less time.
Yeah.
And I think that's hopefully for a lot of people listening is going to be the antidote to a lot of the fear and stress and overwhelm they might initially experience when we say you have to go all in and transform yourself from the inside out.
Get excited about that because it's so cool.
Because, a lot of people are going to be thinking, oh my God, like that sounds too deep, too involved, too big a task for me to take on. Again, I'm too busy. I've got too much going on. I don't have time, blah, blah, blah. But, a useful metaphor would be like investing the time required to train some staff. Let's say that you're a one-man band, you're growing your business, and now you're going to take on a team. Now, initially to train that team, it's going to steal time away from the activities that you can do faster and perhaps better than your team currently can. And so in the short term, it's going to be faster and easier for you to go, stop screwing it up, let me do it. And to basically be micromanaging and all of that kind of stuff. But if you invest the time in building the foundations of your business, which is training your staff so that they can be independent and ultimately become better than you at that one specific skill. Like if you're an entrepreneur, you have to do 10 things. Well, you're going to hire a staff member who only has to do one thing. They're going to do that better than you can do that one thing because you're trying to do everything. So, but investing that time, training them up, now you've got the foundations of a great business. Well, guess what? This is the foundations of a strong, stable mindset, a mindset that has that emotional stability and is able to do life in a way that means now you don't have decision fatigue. You're no longer stressed and overwhelmed. You have so much more energy at the end of the day to either do more work if you're in a really aggressive phase of your business, and now you're being motivated by purpose and passion and excitement instead of stress and overwhelm, or to invest in your kids or things that you'd like to be doing with your time and so forth. So again, you end up being able to do more in less time when you actually address the true source of the issue. And
I think that's one of the things that I've actually learned from you that you do really well is like you do downtime really well. And we did talk about this on episode 4 or 5 of the podcast, where the human doing, and this feeling of constantly wanting to be busy. And a lot of our clients who struggle with, huge amounts of stress and overwhelm also have this, their identity is tied up in overachieving and achieving huge things, and feeling like downtime is a waste of time.
Yeah.
And actually, that's something that I've learned from you. You're very good at doing downtime, and you work really hard. Like when David works, like he works, and there's literally the office door is shut, and I get like devil eyes. If I open the office door, like I get these eyes, or he doesn't even look at me, and he doesn't even acknowledge my presence. You don't even like raise your eyes from your laptop, and I have to like stand there and like, hello, permission to speak. And it's either that you don't acknowledge me or you don't want to talk to me because you're so in flow. You either don't know that I'm there or you just don't want to talk to me because you're in flow. But that's something that you're really good at. When you're focused on one thing, you're focused on one thing.
I really like that bit out of the Facebook movie. I can't remember is it The Social Network or something? But yeah, the movie about the formation of Facebook, where they've got the coders and they've got their earpods, their headphones in, and they're just coding, and they're just completely in the zone and like just unaware of everything else going on around them. And I love that way of working and being focused on one thing and one thing only. So often people are multitasking, even if it's in their head.
Yeah.
So if you're multitasking in your head and you're thinking about the never-ending to-do list and all of the other unfinished business that's coming later that day, well, you can't be present then. You can't be focused on what you're doing right now, and you're going to feel stressed at the same time. So now you're burning up your energy at an exponentially greater rate. So when you do get to those tasks that are coming later in the day, now you're exhausted and you can't do them anyway. Then you find yourself procrastinating and blah, 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 or making mistakes.
I would find myself like thinking about that. I would find myself like rewind about 10 years. I'd have 2 laptops on the go because like one just wasn't enough. 2 laptops, and I would be answering about 4 emails at a time on one laptop. I would have 2 screens up on the other laptop doing things. And like I would be like this. I was the queen of multitasking. But in truth, like my work was so slow, so slow. Like I had the idea to launch the Athletic Fox Blueprint, which was my very first really successful online training program. I had the idea to do that in 2012. I think it took me to the end of 2013 is when I did beta testing in December 2013, launched it in the January of 2014. It took me nearly 2 years to get that program out. And now I can whip around a program like that within a month.
Yeah.
And that's the speed at which things work now compared to what they worked then, despite the fact I was working 16-hour days, being the queen of multitasking, which frankly means doing very little in a very long period of time. And that way of working, of course, was monumentally stressful because you've got to think of like 20 different things at the same time. And back then, I didn't have kids to worry about. I didn't have anything to worry about except feed myself and train. Like life was simple back then. And I can't, you can't bring that mentality, especially having children. Like, there are different aspects in your life that I think are massive growth periods. When you go into your first job, when you start your first business, and then these various different business problems occur, and you have to problem solve your way through that. Having children is like probably the biggest personal growth tool, and it's something that I say to a lot of ladies who are pregnant and say, well, oh God, I should really probably, I really want to start getting a grip on my food issues when I've had the baby. And I'm like, please don't wait. Because if you think things are hard now whilst you're pregnant and you don't have children, just wait until you have the baby, because it's tough. And any struggles that you have,
sleeping 3 hours a night.
Any struggles that you have before you fall pregnant, they're just amplified after pregnancy, which is why I believe so many ladies really struggle with weight loss post-pregnancy or postpartum.
Yeah.
That's a good topic. We should add that to our podcast list. We should talk about that another time.
Yeah.
But if you're listening to this and you're pregnant or thinking about having kids, like, you got to fix all of these things now, whether it's your relationship with food, which essentially means your relationship with yourself. These things have got to be fixed before having kids. And that's not to say that if you've had children, you're a lost cause. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying. It's best to fix it beforehand. But if you've had children and you're really struggling to lose weight now, and you're struggling with your relationship with food, now is as good a time. Just start, like, as soon as you start to recognize these things, then that's a good time to do it. And, sometimes like the worst time is the best time, meaning that it's when shit is hitting the fan left, right, and center. That's the best time to reach out for help, because, anyone can follow a diet plan and, a training plan when, life is cruisy and the kids are in school and, your spouse is behaving well and, the dog hasn't shit on the floor. Like, there's kind of a theme in this podcast, isn't there? Even though we don't have a dog. But things are easy when life is easy, but it's when life is hard. What are your behaviors then? What are your fallbacks then? How are you going to show up in those moments? Because that's what shows your true character.
100%. And that is ultimately going to dictate your success in anything that you're seeking to achieve. Is what are your default reactions and responses, and how do you behave when it's hard, when shit hits the fan? Not if, but when. Like you say, anybody can be perfect and on track and make good choices, etc. when life is perfectly aligned. It's when shit hits the fan that, that's when you gotta grow, and you either fall back on your default mechanisms or you learn a new way of doing things. And it takes getting to the true source of the issue. It's not a time management thing. It's not waiting for other people to change their behavior. It's all about how do you show up, and all of these internally learned strategies that we've been speaking about. Perfectionism is one of them. Sometimes I talk to people about their happiness strategy, which is very much related to what we touched on about living your life from the outside in instead of the inside out. And when people are stuck in the outside in approach, very often they have this mindset of, when I get this shit out of the way, then I can insert good feeling. Then I can relax. Then I can feel good. Then I can do something fun. Then I can enjoy my life. And most people understand that deferring happiness on the macro scale doesn't make sense. As in, when I get married and have 2.4 children, the dog and the white picket fence, when I make $1 million, when, then I'll be happy. Most people get that. But they're inadvertently still doing it on the micro scale. They wait for this next task to be over. And it's only a half an hour task, so it seems insignificant. And I hate this, and it's boring and it's stressful, but whatever. When I get that out of the way, then I can. So they wait for this moment to be over. And then they wait for the next moment to be over. And then they wait for the next moment to be over. And so on and so on and so on. And so now they're just into this habit of constantly waiting and deferring good feelings, waiting for life to be perfectly aligned, waiting for all to-do lists to be complete, all problems to be solved, all unanswered questions answered. So there's nothing outstanding. And now when that happens, then I will feel like I can sit back, relax and go, everything is as it should be again. And when you do, once in a blue moon, have a quote perfect day where everything happens exactly the way that you wanted it to happen, it's not even true inner peace. It's just a sense of relief for maybe half an hour at best. And then what do? You're already overanalyzing and planning the next day and the next to-do list and so forth. And so we have to recognize that empowering emotions are always available at any moment, regardless of what's happening around you. That is emotional fitness, is the ability to regulate your own emotional state independently of what's happening around you. Because there's always going to be unfinished business, always going to be to-do lists. There's always going to be interruptions and tasks overrunning and other people doing dumb shit. There's always going to be something. And if you're making your happiness dependent upon there never being anything, then you're going to be waiting a long time. So it's vital that people start learning how to regulate themselves from the inside out, how to be present, choosing that you're going to get done today, whatever it is that you get done. And some of those things are going to go the way you want them to, and some of them aren't. You're going to have those unforeseen interruptions. Things are going to get bumped over to tomorrow or until next week. So you're going to get done whatever it is that you get done. And you can either get it done in a state of rushing and stress and hurry and worrying about to-do lists coming later that you can't even influence now because that's not what you're doing now. Or you could just choose to enter into a state of calmness where you just totally present, focused on one thing and one thing only, and just taking everything in your stride. And it's either going to go exactly the way you want it to, or it won't. And if it doesn't, you'll deal with it then. You don't have to overanalyze 10 steps ahead, which means that you screw up step one. So being present, learning how to choose and step into the emotional state that you want is one of the most important skills that we teach.
Awesome. So I think that's a wrap on today. So guys, if you have got a question for the podcast, you can contact us and send us an email at podcast@chaselifeconsulting.com. And if you're looking to take action right now on any of the things that we talked about today, whether that's stress, overwhelm, binge and emotional eating, and things like that, then please do reach out to us. You can book a call with us at chaselifeintensive.com/call. And as always, please rate and review if you've liked this podcast and make sure that you subscribe. And remember to go out and chase life and always play beyond the rules.